Madhav sir for setting this up and giving this beautiful opportunity. So most of you here have a very decent understanding in computer science and math. And this presentation is basically to give you guys a very good understanding on what blockchain is, development on blockchain, how Haskell comes into play over here, and a little bit more on the work culture and how the whole Web3 space works. So, Artha, to the next slide. So, these are the topics that we'll be discussing. You'll get a good introduction to blockchain, development on blockchain, the differences between Web 2 and Web 3, why Haskell and why it matters, and what is Plutus, Cardano, a blockchain that exists on a decentralized open source manner, and KONMA, ourselves, and how we work. Working at KONMA, if at all you guys get the interest of doing your internship or coming in as a developer or any faction of KONMA as a matter, and KONMA Flair, our internship uh, wing that will carry you through the entire process. So this is the agenda we have for today. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to let me know. If you can't hear me, if there's any disturbance, feel free to chime in. So yeah, Dutta. Let's go to the next one. Awesome. So obviously the first question that you guys are going to ask is what is blockchain? So I'm going to keep this a little technical because you guys are well aware of how computers work. Usually this course is kind of designed for individuals who have no idea on how computers work, and so this will be much easier and better for you guys. So blockchain by itself is a way how a database is structured. You have various formats, that various data structures that can be used, that can be saved on this blockchain. The basic principle is operator function that happens within computers, that's called the cipher blockchain protocol. And under that, it uses the block cipher mechanism of how blocks are placed. So the data that is put inside this particular blockchain is up to us. Some people decide to put general information about their photos, images, or any kind of data can essentially be saved inside this blockchain. Now, when you say you create a blockchain, you actually have certain servers, you have Kubernetes, you have docking, you have various other forms of efficient data storage mechanisms that can be conventionally used. So the problem over here is to bring a more decentralized nature to such of database management. So here you guys are going to come to listen to a few terminologies, which is decentralized and centralized. In general difference, decentralized is something where you don't have a singular entity that takes decisions and provides the rules of association and so on. A centralized entity usually has that. As of now, around 80 to 90% of every single entity, organizations, businesses, universities all follow a centralized approach. The main issue that we had as humans to start utilizing decentralized entities was technologically not supportive of this nature. So yeah, the next slide, Aditya. So now blockchain is just a bunch of blocks stuck together and has certain data in it. So blockchain technology is something that is a little different, because traditionally in computers, when you send a mail or when you send a message, what essentially happens in the background is a copy is made of this message, and that copy is then transferred. So you don't essentially send the data from your hosting service to another hosting service. So the first thing blockchain does over here is have a certain proof where certain data is reduced from a source and then added to another source. Because of this functionality, or as we call it, the double spend problem, we were able to bring out certain solutions to certain problems. This is to have a verifiable decentralized ledger that has all the data stored from the beginning of time. You can always track this information. You can even track the first Bitcoin transaction that has happened all the way in 2009. And you can track transactions that have happened today or yesterday. The other property of blockchain is it's immutable. Once an information or data is put into this blockchain, you can't really change the information. So using these three properties, blockchain was able to solve two main problems. The first problem is what we call the Byzantine's generals problem. It is a problem that most distributed computing engineers face. And in very nascent and very simple explanation, it's that how does certain computers or certain nodes in a particular network come into consensus that this particular data is the right data and this particular data is not the right data. So to overcome this, Satoshi Nakamoto, the developer or the anonymous developer who invented Bitcoin, basically solved this issue with something called a consensus mechanism. A consensus mechanism is a way or is a protocol in which multiple nodes, yeah, so you can go to the next one, that's fine, where multiple nodes come into consensus that a certain string of data is the right one and none of the other data is the right one. So these are the basic fundamentals of a blockchain. You have various blockchains, you have various consensus mechanisms, and you have various languages that come into these blockchains. The main blockchains that you guys would have heard of is the Ethereum blockchain, the first blockchain to decentralized blockchain to bring in the functionality of smart contracts. And then you know about Bitcoin, obviously, which was the first application to be built. So within this industry, we compare blockchain to be as good as the internet and compare all the applications made on it, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on, compared to certain email services or your Google search service that you get within the current ecosystem. Just go back 1 second. Can you go back, Alta? No, next one. Yeah. So when coming on to the development side of things, most blockchains are decentralized and open source, meaning anything built on the blockchain is also made open source. Um, most of the communities, most of the blockchains are big fans of decentralization and having code open source as compared to the entire corporate structure. So there are five main elements when developing uh, a blockchain or on a blockchain. So the first one is the language that blockchain uses, the compiler or how the blockchain will understand certain information that you provide, the nodes that actually save the data of the blockchain, the various protocols that you use to develop these blockchains or smart contracts, and wallets. Wallets are a medium through which you can communicate to a blockchain. So Bitcoin was majorly written in C++ and a language called S script. And so the smart contracts that are built on Bitcoin are also written in the same language. Ethereum, we built using a language called Solidity, which is based out of JavaScript and C++ again. The chain that we are currently targeting is the Cardano chain, and the language that is being used on the chain is Haskell. So this is where you guys come in. And you have various compilers, various nodes, protocols, and wallets, all for every specific chain. So blockchain has its own wallets. Ethereum blockchain has its own. Cardano's has its own. Bitcoin has its own. Polkadot has its own. Meaning, certain chains have very strict rules that they need to follow. So they don't really have freedom to go beyond their um, chain, but within their chain, they get absolute freedom and a very good trustless environment. Next slide. So there are basically three main entities on developing on a blockchain. The first is smart contracts. So a smart contract is basically a program that is saved on the blockchain rather than on a server or your computer as such. Meaning, if any part of the blockchain goes down, the rest of the nodes will compensate for the loss and provide this information. Meaning, all of this information is decentralized and put in multiple nodes with a certain middle out compression mechanism that makes transfer of this data easy. So to make that process easier, it uses a lot of cryptographic functions. Um, with specific to blockchain standards right now, we use the RSA 256 encryption standard. We use a lot of hashing standards. The hashing standard currently used is the SHA 256, which is your secure hash algorithm 256. And you have consensus mechanism, which is basically a way all the nodes come into an understanding that this data is true. Now you have various types of consensus mechanisms as well, mainly proof of work and proof of stake, but this is a bigger topic which we won't have time for, unfortunately. So once you choose the language, not yet Advita, once you choose the language for development, the first two things you're going to know is fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens are NFTs that you mostly see on the news at the current season of where blockchain and cryptocurrencies are. The fungible tokens were the hype probably 2 years ago. So the main difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token is as the word defines itself. Basically, if I were to give you one Bitcoin and you were to give me one Bitcoin, we haven't essentially made any trade. We have made something we call in the financial industry a null trade. But when it comes, imagine you do that with actual currency. If I give you 100 rupees and you give me 100 rupees, there isn't much change. We haven't really exchanged anything in value. Neither of us have profited or had incurred any loss. But if I were to give you a 100 rupee note made out of diamond and you were to give me a 100 rupee note made out of gold, even though they are both 100 rupees, the diamond and the gold have different valuations. And so each of those notes also have a different valuation. So that's what we call non fungible. Technically, what happens over here is you provide certain metrics, which is your max mint supply. This ensures how much total cryptocurrency exists within that particular blockchain. Now, every blockchain has its governing or native currency. You have Bitcoin for Bitcoin's blockchain. You have Ether for Ethereum blockchain. You have ADA for Cardano's blockchain, and so on. So these coins are what we call cryptocurrencies. They are actual currencies that govern a certain blockchain, and any other cryptocurrency made on top of this blockchain is considered a token. So a token does not have its own blockchain, and a cryptocurrency basically has its own blockchain. Now, to make these fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens, you have certain contract standards. These standards are basically developed by the core founding team that has developed the chain or the community that looks after it. These standards will tell you what to do, what not to do. Everything you put in here is only editable until you push this contract into the blockchain. Once the contract goes into the blockchain, then you cannot edit this particular script. Now, when you put a bunch of these scripts together, you basically get an application. An application built on the blockchain is called a DApp, or a decentralized application. Now, because the main frame and the framework used is open source and decentralized, as I mentioned, everything built on top of this will also be open source and decentralized. So the two main entities that we use right now is storage modules, where an actual data file that's probably 10, 15 GB is saved on a decentralized network as such, and the other is an Oracle. So, like I mentioned, these smart contracts cannot be changed once you deploy them into the blockchain. So, what we do is we query out certain requirements for the blockchain to this Oracle, meaning every time someone interacts with this smart contract, that smart contract is going to call for some information from this Oracle. This Oracle can be connected to certain APIs, or you can feed in any kind of data that is then used to go inside the smart contract and be verified on chain. So an example over here is, let's say you're watching football and Cristiano Ronaldo just scored a brilliant goal. So this event is recorded on Oracle. The even this again, I have to mention, the Oracle does not have any connection to the company Oracle. This is just a technology by itself that we use. So this Oracle will acknowledge the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo has scored a goal through various APIs or any source of data, and it will ask for a picture to Google or to Twitter seeking this moment. And this picture, along with the date, time, and the goal number, is given to the smart contract. And then the smart contract mints non fungible tokens of this image and records it on the blockchain almost immediately. So, this way, anything that happens in the real world can be recorded on a blockchain no matter what. Next slide, Aditya. So now you have the working space. So traditionally, when the internet was developed and available for mass consumption, we were in the era of Web 1. Web 1, as you guys know, within the computing terms, there are 3 points of access, that is, read, write, and execute. Web 1 was entirely only read only, meaning you could basically query for web pages and websites that have information, and you can now read this information. You can't really give any information that will then be processed and given back to you as an output. Web 2 gave you the opportunity to read and write. So this is where we traditionally read an email and write back an email. Any kind of upload, download, any kind of interaction that you're using right now with any application or software is because you have reading access and writing access. Web3 gives you the opportunity to execute certain things on the blockchain. So the main iteration over here is, in Web 2, you log in with a username and password. The processing of data is done on the servers, and then this data is saved on a database somewhere in a centralized server in probably US or the UK. But what happens in Web3 is you log in using your wallet instead of your username and password. You communicate with the smart contract, meaning the smart contract does the processing, and your data is then saved on the blockchain. So this is the main difference between Web 2 and Web 3. Web 3 brings out more decentralized factors within the internet. It brings out more anonymous factors over the internet, and tracking and tracing, although is not impossible, is quite hard. You don't have any KYCs. You can create an infinite amount of wallets. And like I mentioned, blockchain uses the RSA asymmetric encryption protocol. So you always have a public key and a private key. Your data is stored using the public key, and you can only access this data with your private key. Only you have the private key, nobody else will. You can't change the private key and so on, because these are mathematical algorithms that have been embedded into the system since the beginning. You can obviously change it, but that change will only occur henceforth. It will not affect anything that has happened in the past. Yeah, Dutta. Next slide. So now comes the main entity. So KONMA, like I mentioned, is an organization that is completely decentralized and community driven. We don't have people calling the shots. We don't have any individuals that are taking the decision. The entire decision is taken by the community, and the community is anyone who takes part in the community. So KONMA has the research and development wing called as KONMA Labs, where we will be building a blockchain, and this blockchain is going to use the language Haskell. So when you consider building a blockchain, you are either a chain by yourself or you are a side chain that helps the main chain. So anyone in the blockchain industry knew that if you put in too much data into the blockchain, the transaction fee and the time taken for your transactions to be verified increases over time. So this is where the idea of sidechain comes into play. What a sidechain does is it pulls up all these transactions with an easier trusted environment and verifies these transactions within the chain and posts all 100 or 1000 transactions onto the main chain as one transaction. So Conma chain is essentially going to be a side chain to Cardano. And to build this side chain, to build the applications on this side chain, and to use the Plutus platform to develop, Haskell is one of the most required language. And just because of this, we've been getting a lot of news that Haskell engineers are being quite the demand these days just because of Cardano. If you ask why Haskell, this is another topic for another day. I would definitely vouch you guys to go research on this. But compared to traditional languages, which is Solidity, Rust, and Script, Haskell seems to be more secure. So the reason why Conma went with Cardano and not any other chain also has its reason, but this will definitely be put out when we get more time to have a better discussion. So this image that you see is what you call Plutus Playground. This is where you write the main syntax of the code entirely, and then you can test it on the testnet, which is basically a real world environment of the mainnet, but does not have a consensus mechanism, and then the mainnet where the actual data is stored. The next slide, Aditya. So yes, now the whole approach over here is for us to acquire developers from a very young age. The whole idea of developing with a Web3 mentality is quite hard to get, and it is really hard to find developers that are already experienced with 10 to 15 years of development to move their synergy towards Web3. So we've been targeting a lot of colleges and universities looking for students that have any kind of understanding of Haskell. And we have something called KONMA Upskill, where we incentivize all you individuals and teach you about Plutus, anything else on Haskell, have international developers come in and take certain courses to just get you up to speed. Once that is done, you obviously become a developer at KONMA, and that's when you start getting incentivized. So KONMA, like I mentioned, being a decentralized entity, our core philosophy is to include everyone, involve with everyone, and incentivize with everyone. Involvement is very subjective over here. It is only helpful as much as certain individuals come and take part in it, but there is no force. It has complete freedom for you guys to do other things. If you have ideas that you want to incubate, we have Conma Hope, where we provide expertise from around 15 different sectors, starting from agriculture, farming, all the way to machine learning and artificial intelligence. Next slide, Aditya. So why Cardano? Cardano's Gen 3 blockchain that's come after Ethereum and Bitcoin. It has a lot of innovations and a lot of tools that you only find within this chain. Unlike any other chain, which usually goes with the idea of brain to code, you have an idea and then you just code it. You don't have any implications, you don't have any security audits mandated. but Cardano follows a more academic approach where you need to provide certain research papers, data collections, data analysis of primary and secondary data, and providing this as a supporting document, as a as a document, as a documentation for them to accept. So this is definitely the better way to go. Cardano is something that follows a similar approach to the Linux Foundation. If you guys are fans of Linux and the open source world, then this is the place to be. Next slide. So these are the three ways you guys can associate yourself with KONMA. The first is KONMA Flair. Um, this is our internship program. You guys can come in. You'll have a much deeper course. In fact, a 11-week course on blockchain and crypto fundamentals. After which, you guys will go. If you're invested in the development side of things, you will go on to KONMA Upskill, where you will learn about the Plutus platform, more research on blockchain and Cardano from industry elites, mainly from Europe or the US. And if you already have a good like a good base knowledge on blockchain development and how it works, then Conma Labs is willing to recruit you immediately if everything else on your personal life allows this. Next slide, Alta. So these are our roles to fill. Now, even though I've been stressing a lot about Haskell, obviously Haskell is not the only language. Haskell is the only language you use to make certain applications on the blockchain. But when it comes to front end, back end, we use the traditional languages that you can see on screen here. So there are courses for all of these languages as well, and experts to help you out. If you have any interest apart from Haskell in any of this, then we'll be more than happy to have you. The next one, Adita. And yes, questions about anything, questions about blockchain, questions about Conma, I'm open to all of you now. Awesome then. So we're just gonna go line by line. I'm just gonna have get everyone's feedback on the same. So Soham, would you like to go first?
Yeah, okay. So,
Any doubts, any feedback, anything you want to add?
uh, nothing to add. Actually, I have to read first about blockchain in details so that I can understand it more.
Definitely. I mean, if you're interested, we do provide free courses on that. So we could sign you up on the blockchain fundamentals course if you're interested. I'll have one of my teammates send you a link for the same. Alta, can you just send him a link for the Flair for blockchain?
Yeah, I'll be sharing like a tally form of sort, so everyone can, in case anyone's not okay speaking here, you can even send it as a your feedback in that form. So I'll just share the link here.
Awesome. That works. So yes, Shubham, what did you think about this? Do you have any doubts?
No, I don't have a doubt in particular. I'm also in the same situation as Soham. I also want to read more about this.
Of course. So in that case, I guess I'll see you guys. I'll see all of you for the blockchain course very soon. Rishabh, what about you? How did you find the whole course?
I think it was nice. Like you've given me some food for thought, I guess. Um, yeah, I don't have any questions as such, but I would like to read more. Yes.
Understood. So If you guys can fill up the tally form, I'll send in some books, some documentation, knowing that you guys are all really interested in the research side. I'm sure I can give you some very good research papers and so on. But apart from that, you have YouTube and Google, which kind of does this job. So yeah, the link is in the chat. Feel free to check it out. Over to you, Saham. I guess your mic isn't working, so we'll just expect a text reply from you. If you have any doubts, any feedback, anything you wanna talk about. Awesome. Avinash, how about you?
No questions in particular. Yeah, I'll also think about it, I guess.
Awesome, awesome. That's great. Romit, how about you?
It was interesting. I had an academic question mostly. When you say your community is decentralized, what does that mean exactly?
So, our philosophy comes from a certain community in Japan where you have a certain community staying there with everyone's foot and everyone's helping out each other. So when you look at a decentralized entity, there are four fundamental pillars. You have decentralized finance, you have decentralized communication, you have decentralized decision making or voting, and then you have decentralization of information. Conmart tackles these four pillars with its own individual module, with where all of these modules mainly hosted on the Conma chain. So we have a platform called KONMA Hood, which is a decentralized community platform. Consider it like Reddit and Twitter, Discord, all mixed in together. It is currently in its beta stage, and we are planning to transition from Web 2 to Web 3. Similarly, the voting aspect of KONMA is taken care of by an entity called KONMA Org. KONMA Org by itself is a DAO. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization where no single entity takes decision. A decision is made into a certain proposal, is made into a smart contract, and this smart contract is put on the chain. Users of that chain will be able to vote on this proposal, either yes or no. And wherever you have more than 51% of the vote, then that action is initiated. So let's say you want to change the tokenomics of the Conmas native currency. So you put in a proposal saying, hey, I want to change it from 4 decimal places to 3 decimal places. So every currency has a certain decimal place. If you look at US dollar or Indian rupees, you have 1 rupee and then you have 20 paise or you have 20 cents. Similarly, within cryptocurrencies, you have somewhere between 8 to 19 decimal places. So each unit of that is considered as one processing power on the Ethereum chain, and has different protocols and understandings in different chains. Now, the last thing is decentralization of data. Our blockchain is completely decentralized. We don't give out personal information, but we do give out transaction details, and it is in everyone's best interest not to dox themselves by telling this is my wallet and this is everything I do. If you do that, then have one wallet that is doxed for public relations, and then you have another wallet for all your private entity. Unless and until you mention that this wallet is yours, it is quite hard for us. So using Conma DAO, Conma Hood, and Conma Marketplace, which is again a decentralized marketplace, we make the community full and full decentralized. I hope that answers your question, Romit.
I think that does.
Yeah. I mean, I know the thing is, I didn't want to speak of on all these points in this call because it can easily confuse individuals. So please do fill in the tally form. You guys will get certain books and certain documents that you can read. to understand all of this better. And after that, if you guys are interested in becoming an actual developer within this ecosystem, KONMA Flair is open to you guys 24/7. So yes. Anything else, Romit? Any other questions, doubts you had?
That's
Awesome, awesome. Madhav sir, how did you
Yeah,
find
I
the
really did enjoy the talk, and and yeah, I will just like the others will go read more about this. Like, yeah.
awesome, awesome. Okay, I really thought this was the director or dean, Madhav sir,
No, 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 no. I am I am a first year in this actually.
because I was introduced to
And
him as Madhav CS. So I was like, wait, is sir actually here?
no, no.
I'm sorry, but yes, thank you so much for joining, Madhav. Do you what do you study? Do you study
BSc first year maths.
that's math and computer science, is
Yeah,
it?
yes, yes.
Awesome, awesome. How familiar are you with
I am actually new to this development area, but that's
awesome.
why I want to read more, and it definitely did pique my interest. So yeah,
That's great to hear. So just fill out that tally form, and
yes,
then um, we'll get back to you with all the details. You guys can take the course, or if you want to intern at Konma, you can do that. Like I mentioned, there's room from development to just doing simple research. So there is no boss. It's a very good work culture, completely work from home. Once you finish the initial training, then you start getting paid during your internship itself. And yeah, we have certain understandings with other developing entities outside of India. So even after you stay with us for a year or two and you decide to you want to work in another country, then Konma more or less will exist in that country, because we are planning to target all 195 countries, every caste, every creed, every religion. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting, and you guys will be at the forefront of this amazing technology.
yeah, cool.
Cool, awesome. So yes, Advita, Vinay, you have the co-founders here. That's myself, Vinay, Advita, Azlan, and Satya. So we still have like around 13 minutes left. If you guys have anything else you want to ask, that is nothing to do with blockchain. But even if it's blockchain, I'm here. So yes, over to you guys. Thank you all for coming. It was truly an honor to have you here.
That's about it. Thank you so much, Sangeet, for sharing your thoughts, and thank you everyone for joining today. I know it's a new concept, and there's a lot to read. Like how Sangeet said, you'll get a lot of information when you go look into the just Google it also. But we can share as many resources as we can. So yeah, I think it was a good evening. I hope you guys got at least a little bit of insight on what blockchain is, and I really hope we've triggered some kind of interest in this whole space. So yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining, and have a great evening.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all so much.
thank you for your time.
See you.